we hold journalists to an unrealistic standard, which is to have no bias in your life or brain or heart when you're thinking about an issue. And like, I respect the people who do straight news and straight journalism and it's just the facts type of reporting. But I think the history of this country is there's sort of all manner of journalism from different perspectives. And right now, if you look at kind of the range of media that's out there from left to right, there is a there's a massive amount of right-wing content being created every day. Like the heavy hitter in the space is Fox News, but there's upstart outlets called the Daily Wire or the Federalist or Breitbart that are basically funded by billionaires who use these media organizations as political weapons to get themselves things they want, like tax breaks or regulation cuts. And we are a tiny little island on the left, a drop in the ocean trying to push back on those forces on the right. So we're proud of our little place in this ecosystem.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming in, Tommy Veeder, John Lovett, John Favreau, co-hosts of Pod Save America, and now co-authors of the new book, Democracy or Else: How to Save America in 10 Easy Steps. Can I say thank you?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm Deborah Becker. This is On Point.
On Point is a production of WBUR Boston and is distributed by APM, American Public Media.
Support for On Point comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and from the Music Emporium, guitar sellers for more than 50 years, celebrating the enduring presence of music made on the front porch and center stage. You can learn more at themusicemporium.com and insurify.com. Today is Friday, June 28th. Insurify is an insurance comparison site that is proud to sponsor NPR. INSURIFY.
This is KUOW-FM Seattle, KUOW Tumwater, KQOW Bellingham. It is Friday, it's almost noon, therefore it's almost time for KUOW's Week in Review. Here to tell you about it is the host of the show, Bill Radke.
Hey there, we're going to talk about a couple of landmark events this week. It's going to be quite a Week in Review hour. We've got the U.S. Supreme Court saying that local governments can arrest people for sleeping in public even when no public shelters are available. That's got major implications around here. And for the first time, a Washington police officer got convicted of murder on the job. Also, some local schools are making students lock up their cell phones. So we're going to discuss all that stuff. We're going to give you a reason to smile at the end of the show, and I sure hope you stay tuned.
Support for KUOW comes from Cascade Music Collective, presenting Blues Traveler and J.J. Gray and Mofro at Marymoor Live Saturday, July 13th. Tickets available at marymorelive.com and ticketmaster.com. Part of the summer concert series at King County's Marymoor Park.
Hi, I'm NPR media correspondent David Folkenflik. I report on the shakeups, challenges, and trends in the news industry, including here at NPR, because sometimes the media is the story. I also cover the relationships between the press and politicians, and how news outlets are fighting disinformation. All of this is even more relevant in an election year. Please help NPR keep trustworthy information coming your way by making a donation to this station today. And thanks.
Yeah, give us a call at 206-543-9595. Or make your donation at our website, KUOW.org, or through the brand new KUOW app. And thanks.
Support for KUOW comes from Bedrooms and More. With over 80 mattresses in their Seattle showroom, Bedrooms and More is dedicated to helping people find solutions for their sleeping and furniture needs. Learn more about their commitment to customer service and sustainable products at bedroomsandmore.com.
63 degrees in Seattle. Our forecast is for a sunny afternoon with a high of 73. Tonight, mostly cloudy, a low in the mid-50s. Saturday, mostly cloudy, high of 74. Sunday, just like Saturday, mostly cloudy with a high of 74. It's 12:01. Here's an update of today's top news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh.
President Biden is campaigning in North Carolina and later attending a fundraiser in New York after what is widely viewed as a very weak debate performance last night. NPR's Tamara Keith reports the campaign is moving forward.
The freakout about Biden's debate performance among Democrats and prominent anti-Trump Republicans is at a fever pitch, with some even suggesting Biden should step aside to make way for a nominee better able to take on Trump. Asked whether Biden would drop out, a campaign official tells NPR, quote, absolutely not. The Biden campaign says it raised $14 million on debate day and the morning after, posting its best ever hour of grassroots fundraising from 11 p.m. to midnight after the debate ended. Biden allies argue that while the president's voice was hoarse and his answers halting, Trump also reminded viewers of why he lost 4 years ago. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
A Trump rally is underway in Chesapeake, Virginia this hour. The governor of Virginia has been rallying the crowd this afternoon in a state that the GOP is hoping to carry in November. The party's looking to build on what they see as a Trump victory in last night's debate against President Biden. The former police chief for Uvalde, Texas schools has been indicted over his response to the Robb Elementary School mass shooting in 2022. In the indictment unsealed today, Pete Arredondo is accused of failing to follow a series of steps leading to confusion and a delayed law enforcement response to confront the shooter. 19 children and 2 teachers were killed. The San Antonio Express News reports charges have also been filed against former school officer Adrian Gonzalez. That indictment has not been made public yet. Iowa is set to become the latest state to tightly restrict access to abortion. NPR's Alyssa Nadworny reports the state's Supreme Court upheld a law banning abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy in Iowa.
The 2023 law now has the green light from the court to replace the state's current ban on abortions after 20 weeks of pregnancy. Last year, the law went into effect briefly before it was blocked by a lower court in a lawsuit filed by Planned Parenthood of the Heartland. 6 weeks sets a short timeline for getting the procedure, with many women not aware of their pregnancy for the first several weeks. The law allows for some exceptions outside of the ban, including in cases of rape if the assault is reported to law enforcement within 45 days. The ruling will put Iowa among 18 states that either ban nearly all abortions or ban abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. Alyssa Nadworny, NPR News.
U.S. stocks are trading lower this hour. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is down 157 points at 39,006. The S&P is down 13 points and NASDAQ is off 45. You're listening to NPR News.
This is KUOW News. I'm Paige Browning in Seattle. Washington state ecology officials have fined Home Depot $1.6 million for selling a banned substance that harms the climate. The refrigerant was sold in canisters used for car air conditioners. It's a super pollutant known as hydrofluorocarbon, HFC, that traps heat in the atmosphere. Ecology officials say Home Depot sold half a ton of the substance after Washington banned its sale in 2021. Home Depot officials did not respond to KUOW's request for comment. A King County jury has found Auburn police officer Jeffrey Nelson guilty of second-degree murder and first-degree assault in the killing of Jesse Saray in 2019. But the verdicts might not be the last word in the case. KUOW's Ashley Haruko was in the court yesterday and says there could be a new chapter.
They're set to do sentencing on July 16th, and his attorneys have already stated to the judge that they are going to request a new trial.
Defense attorneys have 10 days to ask for a new trial. How much money will Seattle spend on transportation over the next few years? Casey Martin reports the council's weighing ideas, but voters have the final say.
Seattle's mayor says median homeowners should spend just under $40 a month in property taxes to pay for road repairs. This week, Councilmember Tammy Morales said that number should be closer to $45 a month.
You can't put a price on safety. What we're talking about, as many people have referred to, is the fact that people are dying on our streets literally every day.
Morales says she's heard from voters who say they want to spend more on a likely transportation levy this fall to improve safety on bike lanes and sidewalks.
And we had a lot of people who lost loved ones come to committee and say, my husband would be here if we had protected bike lanes in the South End. My child would be here if we had safer crosswalks for them.
She says she's talking with other council members now, but it's unclear if any of them will support her more expensive plan. The levy is expected to be on this November's ballot. Casey Martin, KUOW News.
This is KUOW.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Welcome to Friday. Welcome to KUOW's Week in Review. I'm Bill Radke, here to help you understand two landmark events this week. The Supreme Court said that local governments can arrest people for sleeping in public when no public shelters are available. For the first time, a Washington police officer has been convicted of murder on the job, and we will discuss. Joining me today are host, writer, and producer Angela Poe Russell. Hi, Angela.
Hi, good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. And Washington Policy Center Communications Director David Boze. Thanks for coming.
Hey, great to be here again.
Business Insider Investigations Correspondent Katherine Long. Hi, Katherine.
Hey, so glad to be here.
Glad you're here. And you can find the show live streaming on YouTube. We got cameras in here, and we're good-looking people. So join us on.
If we do say so ourselves.
Only I say so. So search for KUOW there on YouTube, and you can watch the show. And also with me this hour is KUOW reporter Diana Opong. Diana, thank you for coming on.
Hey, yeah, it's fun to be here.
We're going to remind listeners this hour that it is election season, when local public journalism is going to be key to your figuring out which way this country and this region are headed. And we at KUOW want you to have the news you need. And I'm asking you to make sure KUOW's got the money it needs to do that job.
Yeah, today is the second day of KUOW's summer membership drive, and you're up next. To meet this hour's fundraising goal of $10,000, we need you involved right now. Your gift to KUOW and NPR ensures you can cast your most informed ballot this fall.
Just go to KUOW.org, and here you're about to listen to an hour of Week in Review where we bring in diverse viewpoints, with elections being this kind of civic conversation about where to go. We need to hear different takes on election issues. You know that local journalism is on the ropes, but that public radio is always run on the contributions of people who appreciate it the most, and that's you, the listener. So join forces with KUOW right now at KUOW.org.
Or you can call 206-543-9595 if you want to talk to a person. From live debates for governor, U.S. Senate, Seattle City Council, and Washington State Attorney General and President, expert analysis that declutters and quiets the noise from other sources, plain and simple, fact-checked reporting without any spin, just for you. That's what KUOW brings you. The months ahead demand ample resources. The gift you make to KUOW right now will fuel the coverage you need this fall. Because you're a listener, it's essential that you are also a donor. Giving right now is not someone else's duty. Giving now is your duty. Call 206-543-9595 or go online to KUOW.org.
That's right. Thank you. Let's get on with the show. Just reminding you, you're going to help us reach this hour's goal of $15,000 with whatever you can give. $100 gift, $500, you decide. It's going to have a big impact. Make your gift your most generous of the year. Give right now at KUOW.org or call 206-543-9595. Okay, top story on KUOW's Week in Review, a landmark ruling today regarding homelessness. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled it is not cruel and unusual punishment to arrest someone for sleeping on public property, even if there's no public shelter for them to go to. So if you're Mercer Island, you can not build any shelters, so homeless people have to sleep in Seattle, and then you call Seattle a hellhole overrun by homeless people. David, good news, bad news?
I think it's a good news as far as the ruling goes, because it adds flexibility. I mean, there's all kinds of ancillary policies that need to be addressed for homeless issues, because you've got, as you point out, people needing shelter and other things. But when you're talking to people who have engaged in rehabilitation, one of the most common things that you hear, and this has been said a number of times by local activists and others, is that they had a confrontation with law enforcement. They had a dealing with law enforcement, and then they were forced to get help because they all of a sudden, they're away from the drugs, they're under arrest, they're stuck. I've never thought it was sympathetic to have the bar so low that the rock bottom is living on the streets in some kind of semi-permanent condition where the rest of society just gets to walk by. I'd rather have law enforcement there, which, by the way, is no small expense. I mean, if you start arresting people for things, and the court actually said that there was that if homelessness was their only choice and they didn't have another place to stay, that was one of the conditions they could use to defend themselves if they were fined or other things. So there's all kinds of complexity to the decision, but you need something to make it so that that rock bottom, that area is lifted up so that people seek and find help and and it's provided earlier.
Yeah, but Angela, whether it's helpful or not to sort of hit rock bottom and have law enforcement intervene, the Supreme Court decision was about whether it's cruel and unusual to, when someone doesn't have another place to go, to, as opponents of that ruling would say, criminalize homelessness.
Yeah, you know what's going to be interesting to me is what progressive cities, quote unquote progressive cities, do now. What is the next move? Because for so long, that's been their reasoning for not taking certain actions, saying, hey, the courts have told us we cannot legally do this. We cannot legally arrest them, take them away, take on these hard policies. So now that they do have the flexibility, I almost wanted to reach out to the mayor's office right before the show and say, what is the move now?
Yeah, I've been waiting for a statement as well.
Yeah. That's going to be the question.
I mean, what was interesting to me is that the Supreme Court was basically debating something that we talk about a lot as a city, which is, do people who are sleeping on the streets, are they there because they are choosing to be there or because they are victims of things beyond their control? And, I think anybody who's listened to KUOW's excellent podcast series, Lost Patience, gonna plug that forever.
Thank
I think it's a really good one.
Agreed. Will James, Lost Patience. Check it out. Podcast.
If it's really good, people should be donating to KUOW.
Wow. Dave, are they paying you to be here?
Go home. Way to go, David.
I mean, so my takeaway from Lost Patience is that people who are on the streets, they're battling a lot of things they have no control over: untreated mental illness, addiction, and also that part of the street homelessness crisis that we're grappling with is the result of systematic defunding of our inpatient mental health care system. So there's a sick irony, right, in that we as a society have decided that we're okay with these folks sleeping on the street, and now the Supreme Court has said, and it's also okay to lock them up for that. I mean, I think my question is, will this ruling actually change very much? Even the liberal justices in oral arguments acknowledged that cities have a lot of ways to effectively criminalize homelessness without specifically criminalizing homelessness, such as criminalizing public defecation or fires, and those are all steps that cities could have been taking, regardless of this ruling.
David, if there's no public shelter, then where do people sleep? On the bus?
Well, they might be on the bus, they might be in other places, or they might decide to go seek shelter where it's available. I mean, I have relatives that were living on the streets. I still do. One of them passed away recently. I think she was 36 or so. So there was a moment where she was clean for a period of time, and it was an extended period of time because of hospital stays and other things. And then that if the services are not available right away, people with severe addictions will just leave, and they are right back to square one. So that kind of intervention that sounds tough or horrible, I think, is a more merciful intervention than most other things. So, a lot of this is up in the air. I mean, I would like to say that people will suddenly awaken and try to figure out better ways to solve this problem of addiction and mental health issues. But there's a lot of politics involved, and you look at the state priorities. I mean, how many years has the foster care system in Washington State been a mess? And there's been lots of ideas to improve it. And, it stayed a mess for a very long time, and it still is a mess.
Well, one thing we all can agree on, I mean, what we're doing now isn't working, right? I mean, do you think you're looking at me like, I don't know, maybe it is, but I don't think it's working. I don't think we've seen an improvement at all. And so I think there's a little bit of hope with cities at least having the flexibility. I do know that Seattle has made some investments, or is starting to, in terms of mental health care. You talk about behavioral health, something you were speaking of there, Katherine. So I get David's point about making the situation uncomfortable enough so that people maybe make certain choices. But I also think there's another piece of it. Like I said, there are
Lots
so
of
many
pieces,
reasons why people end up in this situation.
Yeah. Well, so that's the Supreme Court today. Meanwhile, voters have got decisions to make about homelessness, too. And a leading governor candidate just issued his plan, Republican Dave Reichert. Dave, what are Reichert's most important points, and how are they different from what his opponents would do?
Well, from what I could tell, and I was, just basing it on the story I saw, I haven't had a conversation with Reichert about it or anything, but it looked like that one of his key platforms there was housing with accountability, and that's been one of the key components when there's a housing first policy that's kind of like get people into a house and that's number one, and it doesn't matter if they're continuing with the addiction and other things. That policy doesn't seem to work. That is one where you're basically hiding the problems that people have. The other one, which is, I think it was perfected I think it's Austin, Texas, that really kind of launched that thing where it starts with accountability, with certain expectations of behavior and work and services, trying to get services and other things working into yourself, plus community engagement. That's been a more successful track. So, I think he expressed a desire to do some pilot programs along those lines, and I think that would be great for Washington State.
So go ahead, please. No, you go ahead.
One question I had about this is, I think it was last week that he, perhaps in a slightly joking fashion, said that his plan for homelessness was to send homeless people to camp at Evergreen College.
Mm-hmm.
And my impression...
The liberal college.
Right,
Uh-huh.
Exactly. My impression is that he took a bit of flack for that. Is it your...
The Danny Westneat flack?
Some flack from Danny Westneat,
That's a Seattle Times opinion writer,
Is it your impression that he rolled out a more comprehensive plan in response to that? Or was this sort of in the works for a bit?
I know that he was working on
Okay.
it. I mean, I know that much just from other sources. But yeah, it was, Westneat himself on that column seemed to recognize that that's a side joke. It's not uncommon for conservative people to joke about Evergreen State College.
No, it's
or
not.
others
Not
to
uncommon
joke
for
about
liberal
Evergreen
people to
State
joke
College,
about
right.
Evergreen State College.
I have relatives that have graduated from Evergreen State College, and we joke about that too. But I think that was just kind of an aside, and it's kind of, it was strange to me to have it featured so prominently. But that is the state of politics today, where any particular thing that you can utilize gets all kinds of attention, and that's why when people go to the big show, the national spotlight, anything you say can and will be used against you.
Absolutely.
So I just dismiss that, and I'd focus more on the policy thing.
You know what I realized as you were speaking, if we go to away from the housing first model and say housing comes with accountability, you have to, attend this class or not take these drugs, whatever the rules may be. So if we do that model and have this in place where we can now arrest people for sleeping on the street, it sounds like you either shape up or go to jail. That sounds like the model we'd be leaning towards if we get away from housing first and we have this Supreme Court ruling. Am I missing something on that?
Or you end up going someplace that doesn't have the same rule. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
People will go from state to state. They'll go from, I've talked to just a couple of people that would shift from, King County to Snohomish County or Pierce
You just
County
move around,
based on which one they liked the most. And it wasn't necessarily services that they were looking for. They were looking for a leniency towards certain other things that they had a habit of. And, I'm not saying that, like you say, it's not necessarily a choice, and it's not necessarily not a choice. It's a combination of factors that wire people's brains that way. Everybody has something, right? Look at me. I eat too much, right? I should be able to stop that right now, but it's hard. It's hard for people to change the way that they're wired. And so I have a lot of sympathy for people that have that kind of addiction, but with one so destructive and prone to public expense and problems, I think you have to have that kind of outside pressure of law enforcement and other things.
What about the safe injection site piece of this?
Yeah, the safe injection site is so-called, that's what supporters tend to call it, places to use drugs with sterile equipment and trained supervision, which we don't have in Washington State. We've talked about it, but Reichert brought that up, that he thinks we should continue to not have them. I don't know how.
Was wondering.
So I don't know how big a dent that is, and we tend to mix a lot of things, crime and drugs and mental illness and homelessness. But anyway, that's do we cover it for now, and we'll watch We'll see what the other candidates are proposing. We're going to have candidate debates and all that kind of stuff here on KUOW.
Well, see, the one thing I wish is when people feel compassionate about it, instead of giving on the side of the road directly to somebody who has this problem, if they would instead give to an organization like, Union Gospel Mission or any of these, people that are actually helping people, that is so much better. And it's, it might relieve your conscience for just a second there, but you're not really doing people any favors.
Well said. Drive people to the resources.
You are doing a favor if you donate to KUOW today, though. Just bringing it back to you.
Well said. Well said. In fact, by the way, you're listening to, in case you've just tuned in, on KUOW, you're hearing diverging views, different takes from different neighbors here during this election season, which is what Week in Review is all about. In fact, KUOW reporter Diana Opong is also here to help remind you that good politics needs all of us comparing notes on what you should know. This election is going to shape our lives, and you can donate to the cause of local journalism by sending KUOW a little money now at KUOW.org.
And we have a new app that's out, and so you can donate there, which is really cool and convenient if you have a smartphone.
The KUOW app.
Yep. And you can get it from wherever you grab your podcast app, or not podcast apps. I mean, you should go there too, because we've got some great podcasts, but your apps from your app store on your phone.
Right.
Today is day 2 of KUOW's summer membership drive. And if you are listening right now, we hope that you'll give us a call, 206-543-9595, and donate online at KUOW.org as well. We need to meet this hour's fundraising goal of $10,000. We need you involved right now to make that happen. Bill, supporters of KUOW make an actual difference in people's lives by informing, educating, and keeping this programming on the air, even inspiring those who listen and participate in our community. The world's culture is sort of within everybody's reach now, right? We can be across the world in just a few minutes through a story. And so if you want to keep educating yourself, your children, and those that you care about, support this community-supported, funded project and programming by calling 206-543-9595.
On KUOW's daily local interview show, Soundside, the host, Libby Denkman, was talking with a UW researcher who studies disinformation, and it was sobering to hear how easy it is to pump out false claims, share fake videos, take facts out of context. And I was thinking, well, good thing we have local media on your side, especially at election time. Trouble is, local news is on this slippery slope. So if you want to be a bulwark against lies and a champion of democracy, do something about it. Make a contribution to KUOW right now. Here's a listener comment from Emily in Seattle who said, I count on KUOW's unbiased and informative reporting in an age of fake news. Thank you, Emily.
Yes, thank you, Emily. And if you want to be just like her, we hope that you'll donate now at KUOW.org. We provide expert analysis from NPR and local to help you sort of declutter the noise, all of the things that are going on. And we help to hopefully increase your media literacy so that you can decipher what's fake from what's real. And because you're a listener, it's essential that you also become a donor. Giving is not someone else's duty. I said this already. It's yours. You power KUOW with your support. Head to our website, KUOW.org now.
Okay. Last comment from a listener for now. Donna says, I'm a monthly subscriber giving an additional gift today to support the excellent local coverage. Weekdays at noon are my favorite KUOW hours. Kudos to Libby Deckman and Bill Radke.
Yay.
So thank you, Donna. Help us reach this hour's goal, $10,000 with whatever you can break off for local journalism. It is so vital. So give right now at KUOW.org or call 206-543-9595. And Week in Review continues in just a moment.
.64 degrees in Seattle, expecting sun this afternoon and a high of 73. It's 12:25. This is KUOW, listener-supported public radio.
Support for KUOW comes from Legacy Forest Defense Coalition, with a mission to protect Western Washington's oldest remaining lowland forests. Learn how the coalition's legal efforts are helping to protect and conserve natural heritage at WLFDC.org. And from the Recreational Boating Association of Washington, encouraging all who use Lake Union to mind the seaplane advisory zone. When yellow lights flash on the line of buoys, a seaplane is about to take off or land. Lake users are asked to move 200 feet away. More at mindthezone.org.
You're listening to KUOW's Week in Review. I'm Bill Radke here with my panel for this week. Washington Policy Center's David Boze, Business Insider's Catherine Long, and journalist, writer Angela Poe Russell. And we are doing what we do on Week in Review, breaking down what happened this week and helping you figure out what it means. For the first time ever in Washington, a police officer has been convicted of murder for actions in the line of duty. Auburn officer Jeffrey Nelson shot and killed an unarmed man during a struggle. The King County jury did not believe Nelson's defense that he was afraid he was about to be killed. A murder charge was almost impossible in Washington until voters approved a police accountability initiative a few years ago. So now Officer Nelson could go to prison for life. Catherine Long, what do you think of an officer being liable for murder?
I mean, I think this case is effectively a case study for why we needed this law change. This is an officer, Officer Nelson, who has a history of violent encounters with civilians and also misrepresenting what happened in those encounters to paint himself in a more favorable light, and who was also protected by his police department for years while he was allowed to run roughshod over the poor residents of Auburn. He's done a lot of stuff, but one thing that sticks out to me that we know about him is that in 2014, he was leading a child into juvenile custody, and he told that child, "I hope you don't get raped." I mean, what kind of police officer is that? I mean, this is somebody who far from being reprimanded in a serious way by Auburn Police Department, was awarded a Medal of Valor for an incident that it later transpired he had seriously misrepresented the facts around.
And the city had to settle on that.
Right. I mean, one way we can think about this officer, Officer Nelson, is the $5.7 million man, right? That's the amount that Auburn has had to pay out in settlements to his victims. So it raises the question for me of, without this law change, without a law like this, how else could we hold a police officer like Nelson accountable? Even now, it's only now after he's been convicted of murder that Nelson is, that Auburn is going to decide whether to decertify him as a police officer due to the strength of that city's contract with the Police Officers Guild. And even during the case, Auburn PD obstructed the prosecution. Prosecutors say they refused to verify the authenticity of Nelson's training records. They made it harder for this case to go forward. What
consequences are there when a department does that?
Yeah,
it's a great question, right? I mean,
Angela, prosecutors no longer have to prove that an officer acted out of malice. They just have to convince the jury that deadly force was not reasonable or necessary. But the idea before was that we put cops in dangerous situations, suspects resisting, the cops got a gun and or a knife, and we don't want cops spending life in prison for a split-second mistake. That was the idea.
I'm so glad you brought up that point. I'm with Catherine, and that I'm so glad that we have this flexibility now. This needed to happen. At the same time, accountability needs to come with access. And when I say access, I mean access to mental health supports. And you know what? I'm just going to end it with that. Mental health supports. I don't believe that every, I'll just say, for lack of a better term, bad cop has a mental health issue. But I think we can acknowledge that you are in a profession where you are seeing the worst of society. And you can't say, well, I would have acted this way in that situation. I would have acted that. No, you don't know what that's like. I mean, my dad was a police officer, and he coped through alcohol. I mean, can I have like 30 seconds to tell you a story?
Yes.
Okay, so as a journalist, you are witness to all of these horrible things that happen. And the research has shown that just watching news, so you all listening, as listeners, viewers, just watching a bunch of news about violent incidents can cause anxiety. So imagine if you are an officer in the middle of it and the trauma, the PTSD that occurs. So first responders, 30% of them dealing with substance abuse issues. So yes, we need to hold them accountable, but we also have to make sure they're healthy. So when they are in these situations, life or death in moments, it's not fight, flight, all this and freeze. It's they're able to go with their training.
Which is the jury said that he did not go with his training in this case.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of frightening things about this case. I hadn't followed it until I was doing preparation for this show. But, you're reading about the union rules that keep Auburn from even considering getting rid of him before this happened, because as Katherine pointed out, there was a number of incidents that were very troubling before this, including if you're giving an award to someone and it turns out they were lying about the purpose of the award, was that yanked? And is that in the process now? What were the consequences for people not cooperating with this? I mean, the public has a right to know certain things, and they have a unique responsibility, unique power, and they have a unique job. I recognize all that. It should be extremely difficult to prosecute an officer. I have no problem with that either. However, everything in this case that I'm reading in this story was really stunk to heaven, including the union rules here, which we've seen before, which is, it's a public employee union, government negotiating. And, just like we've seen in the past where you've got teachers doing bad things that get to stay on forever or moved from place to place because of union contract rules, you have this officer who's been caught in a number of things, according to this, including the one where he got a medal for it.
And this lower standard for charging cops doesn't address
any of
union
that stuff.
contracts.
Right. And so you have multiple things here that are causing problems, and one of them what we see it in Seattle schools right now, where there's this threat to close 20 schools because they negotiated a contract they can't afford. That's just irresponsible and stupid. So with the officer though, it's it's a life and death situation. It's even more problematic. So you see these kinds of things and you think, okay. It seems like I recognize why the police officers would want to protect themselves. There's a lot of politics involved, and any officer is one bad arrest away from being on national television, and all kinds of craziness could impact their lives and all that kind of thing. But there's got to be a way to look at somebody who's lying about their arrests and lying about what's happened. You've got evidence to that effect that would make it easier for cities and the officials that are supposed to be representing the public to remove them from that job.
Yeah. I would add that, I think it was not easy to try this case. My understanding is that it didn't even start getting investigated until the Port of Seattle began looking into it.
Like a $2.7 million case.
It cost a lot of money.
Geez.
Yeah, over $2 million to prosecute, and it lasted for quite a long time. So this was not an easy verdict by any means.
So it sounds like if we wanted to, because in this case, you have the officer that was culpable, but an organization that basically kind of stood in the way, it sounds like, during this investigation.
That's what the
So
prosecutor
as far
said.
as I understand it, there's nothing legal in Washington law that would, offer some kind of a repercussion for a police department that engages in that behavior. And maybe we need to have it if we don't.
Well, I think that's where the Justice Department would step in, as it has in the case of the Seattle Police Department.
Good point. Yes.
I want to make time to talk about one more officer misconduct case this week. A federal jury awarded almost $700,000 to people who were jailed for writing anti-police graffiti outside Seattle's East Precinct building. This was at the height of the pandemic. The jail had stopped booking people because of COVID risk. Yet the police had a so-called protester exception. Then the jury found that protesters were being punished for the anti-police content of their graffiti. Katherine, for Seattle to be content neutral, would the city have to punish everybody who draws, including children drawing sidewalk rainbows?
I mean, I don't know if that's exactly the right question to be asking about this case, which is not.
I think the judge brought that up.
The judge did bring that up, but I guess in my mind, this case is about civil liberties and not about graffiti. I think at every twist and turn of this case, we've seen really unforced errors from the SPD that have resulted in reputational hits. It was pretty clear from the get-go that the police were arresting folks for graffiti. I say graffiti in big scare quotes because they were using sidewalk chalk and charcoal, so it was
removable.
It's going to come off the next time it rained. But it was pretty clear that the police were arresting folks who were writing anti-police slogans and letting people who were writing pro-police slogans write as much, again, removable graffiti as they wanted to. They were, as you said, Bill, jailed in violation of the city's COVID rules. And one interesting tidbit that came about in the course of discovering this case is that we learned some interesting facts about the police officers' break room in the East Precinct, namely that they had a Trump 2020 flag and also a mock tombstone for a teenager who was killed by Seattle police in 2017. Again, reputationally, not a great look. And now a jury has ruled against the officers, and the city has to pay, not insignificant damages. I think just like I said at the get-go, just a lot of unforced errors here.
And did I read that some of the police officers would have to personally pay some of the damages?
Yeah, I was curious about
Yeah.
that. My understanding is that would be covered by the city's liability insurance, but I would have to fact check that because I am not sure.
Yeah, the
I
city
thought
is
that was
paying
interesting.
compensatory damages, but the report I saw said that the cops had to pay the punitive damages.
Yeah, I don't know how. Is that coming out of their paychecks?
Yeah.
Do we know how that works?
I don't know.
Yeah,
so
to be continued.
before we leave the topic, David, I want to know, this gets at a perception we discuss often on this show. Do you think our police act like whatever the word is for a very aggressive snowflake? Not all of them, but do a troublesome number of officers have an attitude of, how dare you disrespect me and defy my authority?
Well, I mean, just like what was discussed earlier, if you're dealing with the worst of society over and over again, and then somebody treats you with disrespect, and you're angry already, any human being is bound to be a little snippy. They're just going to be going like, "Hey, you can go from 0 to 100, and you're irritated, but you're not really irritated at the guy you just pulled over for the broken taillight. You're irritated, or the jaywalker. You're really irritated about these other people that were." You'd arrested because they beat their kid the 15th time in a row or something like that. Just horrible stuff that you're seeing.
Angela, daughter of an officer, maybe you have a thought on that.
On which part of which piece? I just think it's human nature that at the heart of it, police at their best are supposed to be there to protect and serve. And they are putting their lives on the line every day. And so, yes, human nature, and someone says all cops are bad, things like that. Like, yeah, that would absolutely ruffle your feathers. Now, yes, they're supposed to be, held to a higher standard and act with professionalism. I'd like to think my dad would, and most others would. So it's understandable, but not excusable.
Well, with power, it's hard to get humility with power too,
right?
right?
Well,
I mean, you're commanding a certain amount of respect. You need a certain amount of respect in order to function in your role. And it's also hard to you see it online with all the police videos and on social media and stuff, where every once in a while a cop just kind of shines through because somebody's treating him really disrespectfully, and they say, you know what, that is your right. You can flip me off all you want. However, I do still need to see your driver's license and registration. And you would just want to cheer.
Yeah, I mean, not to go all Peter Parker on you all, but great power comes great responsibility. I am no saint. I get irritated all the time. I do not have the power to put people who irritate me in jail.
Yeah.
You are listening, by the way, to KUOW's Week in Review. I'm Bill Radke. I'm here next to KUOW reporter Diana Opong. And Diana, this is day 2 of our summer membership drive. KUOW's fundraising goal this hour to pay for local journalism, $10,000, and meeting that goal depends on our listeners. You, dear listener, contributing right now.
Yes, by going online to KUOW.org or by calling 206-543-9595. As a donor to KUOW, you'll fund election reporting this cycle that will inform your vote this fall. KUOW is a part of a statewide coalition that will bring you live debates for governor, U.S. Senate, Seattle City Council, and Washington State Attorney General. There's a lot of elections coming up this year, and we're closely following all of the races that matter to you most.
Yes, and so you can support that. You can make it happen and shore up local journalism, which is having a tough time. Just go to KUOW.org, folks, because we have issues in Western Washington, which I actually mean in 2 ways. There are public policy issues we need to figure out. You need information to be a voter and a citizen and a neighbor and a playwright and a cocktail party conversationalist and just run your life. But we've also got issues when it comes to living together. And I look at Week in Review as a model for sitting down together, whether we agree or not, and we agree on many things, but where we don't, we listen with curiosity, we respect each other's humanity and work out our issues together. And it doesn't come free. And if you want a solution to those struggles in local news, be that solution. Give a little money right now at KUOW.org.
That's right. And Bill, you're right. There's a lot going on in our community, our state, our country, and KUOW is here to help keep you up to date and aware of all the things, because there's so many things. NPR and KUOW listeners will... KUOW and NPR listeners are what keep us on the air. And NPR reporters and KUOW reporters will ask the tough questions that you need to hear of candidates and people up and down the ballot. We will interrogate the responses on your behalf, separating fact from spin. And it's your support of KUOW that will translate into election and candidate coverage that really empowers you with the information you need to cast your most informed ballot this fall. So participate right now in KUOW's summer membership drive. Help us reach that $10,000 goal and fund our election coverage. Do just what Stephen and Sarah did in Tacoma. They say KUOW makes my commute a lot easier. It's good to have entertainment on the road, and I feel more informed. It's a part of my family and a part of my community. And we feel like you're part of the family too. You're a part of our community, and we hope that you'll support this community-supported effort right now. 206-543-9595.
Or KUOW.org. Okay, we're about to get back to Week in Review. One more comment from Bruce and Bridget in Bellevue. That's Bruce, Bridget, and Bellevue, who say, we love KUOW's local reporting, Seattle Now and Week in Review. So help KUOW reach our goal this hour with your best gift right now. What can you do? $100, $500? I know people who can do $1,000. I don't know them well enough, but I know they're around.
Wow, Bill. Friends you have.
We have their number. Yeah.
Donate. There's so many people in this region for whom they're not going to miss a meal if they help out local journalism a little bit with a generous gift. And maybe that's you, or maybe it's just a little bit that you can break off for KUOW. You can go online, KUOW.org, or call in your contribution to 206-543-9595. Okay, quick break, and we're right back with my panel, and right back with more of your Week in Review.
It's 12:42. Week in Review will continue in a minute on KUOW-FM Seattle, KUOW Tumwater, KQOW Bellingham. Weather forecast for the Seattle area this afternoon, sun and a high of about 73.
Support for KUOW comes from Third Place Books. Sci-fi duo James S.A. Corey launched the first book in a new series, The Mercy of the Gods, Saturday, August 10th at 7 p.m. Tickets available now at thirdplacebooks.com.
And from Archbright, offering virtual and in-person training on supervision, management, communication, and collaboration. Available for individual enrollment or as private team trainings. Details at archbright.com.
You are listening to KUOW's Week in Review. We're always talking in between the breaks, and then when we're microphones on, bringing you what happened this week and what it all means. And my panel this week, we've got host, writer, producer Angela Poe Russell. We have Washington Policy Center Communications Director David Boze, and investigations correspondent at Business Insider Catherine Long. And did I mention we're good looking, which you can confirm or disprove by going to YouTube and searching for KUOW. Okay, on with the show. This fall, students of 2 Seattle middle schools will no longer be able to use their phones in class. Robert Eaglestaff and Hamilton International are banning cell phones during the school day. A similar ban started last year in Gig Harbor's Peninsula School District, where Chris Hagel heads up digital learning. Hagel says the ban seems to be helping with student engagement.
What our administrators say in walking through classrooms is, they're seeing more conversation amongst kids. They're seeing more natural opportunities for these kids to have conversations where they haven't seen those in the last, say, 5 years.
And Angela Poe Russell, you say it's about time.
Absolutely. I was talking with a director of a summer musical camp, and for the first time this year, they made them turn in their phones at the beginning. He said what normally would take them 2 weeks in terms of the bonding, it was happening in 2 days just by doing that. The other issue that this raises is not only the distraction piece, all the concerns about the harm in social media, but he also highlighted a safety issue in terms of people, the cyberbullying piece, people meeting up for, conflicts, showing up, showing up on location, creating
So they're
problems.
on their phone saying, hey, this is going down.
Exactly, being able to make plans like that. So in certain situations, depending on, the populations you're dealing with, it can there are a whole range of issues that could occur. But I just applaud the ones that are having the guts to do this. I mean, and let's admit it, some of us parents, we're part of the problem. I am guilty of texting my kid at school, something that really can wait.
Yes.
And there are studies that say once you're interrupted by a text, it can take a child 20 minutes to be able to fully refocus.
It can can take an adult 20 minutes to fully refocus.
And Diana, you're pretty passionate about this topic too, right?
I am actually on Soundside earlier this week. We spoke to Hagel and a researcher who studies the impact on social media. And I also spoke to teachers and students in our community. And I was really surprised. This is a very polarizing topic, right? There are a lot of people who are like, yes, we want phones, especially the kids. And then adults who are like, no, thank you. And then there are some adults who are like, no, my kid has a medical issue. I need to be able to reach them. They need to be able to reach me. Or they have anxiety, or I should be able to decide whether, my son so-and-so can actually bring their phone. The school shouldn't decide that. I just think that's really interesting.
And I should say this, the camp director did offer medical exemption. So if they had proof that they're diabetic and they used an app, there was a medical exemption. Otherwise.
But that issue of why is
lock them up.
Lock them up. But the idea that the school shouldn't decide. I mean, we kind of schools have decided about whether you need a hall pass to go to the bathroom, whether you can chew gum, and all kinds of stuff. So I'm not coming down one side or the other, but it's not always clear when we should just say. I think schools are I'm sure that my kids' teachers know better than I do what it is like for my kids to have a phone in the classroom.
Through the history of humanity, we did not have children with some kind of device. We didn't have carrier pigeons with them and the carrier pigeon days. We didn't put telegraph lines in there for them to constantly communicate with parents. This seems like a no-brainer to me. Like, put the cell phones away for a while. It's not going to hurt them. When I was a kid, you had a note from the office. If your parent called, they'd have a note from the office. Now we have AI and other things that could transcribe it for you, print it off. They could hand out the notes at the end of the class, or like you say, if there's a medical exemption, I can see that, although even that sounds to me like people are just trying to stretch some, there's a lot of fear that parents have about, being able to not reach their child at that given moment.
Especially at a school shooting, that comes up a lot.
With that kind of thing, sure. But, if the phones put the phones in the class then, and just have them locked up in the class, and when the class is over, the kid can get their phone back or something.
Loath as I am to propose a technological solution to any societal problem, I feel like there's a big opportunity for any phone company here that wants to roll out a technology that says, okay, this is a child's phone, so it's just going to be bricked from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. except for calls to and from mom and dad, or that one app they need to monitor their medical condition.
I saw an ad for one on Facebook
Really?
yesterday. Yeah, something just like that, where they were very strict on what the kid could use the phone for. And I was interested, but my kids are, the oldest is 7, almost 8, but they think they need a phone. But I've banned it till the age of 31 because.
Diana, what is the case that some students made for why they should have a phone? How is the phone helpful to them in school?
Yeah, so a lot of school districts have, the devices that kids have to use, right? Tablet, some type of laptop, computer. And I know one student, a 7th grader, who was like, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes my mouse doesn't work. Sometimes the internet connection doesn't work. I can't upload it, but I can upload it on my phone. I can take a picture of the assignment and I can, upload it in the hall or whatever the thing might be. And so for her, it was like, I do need my phone because I actually use it. Sometimes they're in the middle of a test. They have access to their calculator, but their computer's frozen. Then sort of there's this idea, right, that everyone should be equal, but they're not if everything's not working appropriately. And I know one student, or Chris Hagel, was saying, it's not consistent. And another student mentioned that. She's like, some teachers who know their kids well will say, oh, you guys can keep your phones. Other teachers are like, no, you need to have them off and away, right? And so it's not consistent across the board in every classroom at every school district. And that can be confusing for kids and really hard for them to know, well, what is the right thing?
Where I think, thanks for that. Where I think we just went wrong, and maybe I'm just sounding like an old fuddy-duddy here, but I remember, several years ago, we're in the technology age and schools are scrambling. We need to get tech in the schools, get them iPads, get them this, get them this. And really, when we step back, I feel like what's going to make them better in the tech industry isn't necessarily going to happen on the screen at that age. It's going to be their ability to think critically, the ability to be able to have empathy and see the world from different angles.
Be creative.
Yes,
also
be creative.
Maintain attention longer than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That part's Catherine.
Not pointing any fingers, but talking about myself here.
But what about the argument that we live in a technological time, right? These kids never have known life without a cell phone like we have, and carrier pigeons or whatever, right? They are used to having devices because that's the type of world they're living in. So shouldn't we potentially, just, as an idea, be continuing to educate them on how to best use those devices? Because it's going to be a part of their normal life. Like, I use my cell phone all the time for work. This thing's always with me.
Yeah.
I use it all the time. I'm never going to not use it.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just that in some of these documentaries, the creators said they were designed to be addictive. So it's almost like, yes, they're good tools, but if we can't shut it off, kind of like you were talking about food earlier. I'm like, I cannot stop eating the bonbons or whatever.
I used to teach a homeschool co-op, and one of the kids ended up being addicted to video games. And I thought it was a joke at first. Then I found out he had serious health consequences, had serious financial consequences, and it was no joke and quite traumatic for the family. I know we live in a tech world, but we, as adults, we know to put the thing away, right? If it's a distraction, we know to put it away. We have all kinds of circumstances, interviews with people, radio broadcasts, other things where you put the phone away or put it silent. And I feel like telling the kids that while you're learning in class, you put the phone away is just another way of reinforcing the general rules that they'll need as adults.
You mean the rules I don't enforce at home because my kids come home and I'm not forcing them to put their phones away at all times because I'm not a good parent.
Well, nobody's a good parent all the time. Yeah. That's what I tell myself.
Right. Okay, well, that's we'll see how much this spreads. We were saying that a couple of Seattle middle schools I think they're both in the North End. I know Robert Eaglestaff is, and Hamilton International banning it. And as Diana Opong was telling you, Peninsula School District in Gig Harbor is making a similar ban. So we'll see how that plays out, and we'll keep talking about it here on Week in Review. Diana is with us because not only are you a fellow reporter and host and journalist, but also you and I, Diana, are reminding folks that this is day 2 of KUOW's summer membership drive, and we're asking you, dearest listener, to pay a little money to sustain local journalism and our excellent daily local show, Diana, that you mentioned and that you were on, Soundside.
Yes, Soundside's a wonderful local show, similar to Week in Review, where we bring you the voices of the community and stories that matter to you. And if you value that, we hope that you'll support it today. Go online to KUOW.org. And one of the things that I love, Bill, is sometimes I'm not able to listen, but I can always go back in the podcast to check out Week in Review, which is always really helpful. If you value that, you can give us a call, 206-543-9595. And we have a lot of digital articles. So that's another way to sort of stay on top of things and stay above and beyond sort of where everybody else is. You can be the person that knows everything amongst your friends who maybe aren't listening. We hope you'll support now, 206-543-9595.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the problems that local journalism has is we no longer can reach everybody we want to reach by talking into a microphone.
Right.
It is expensive to be in all these platforms, to have all these podcasts and this, and our website is it's just another world beyond what it was even, a few years ago, right? And so it's constant, and that is why it's one reason why it's so hard to be in local journalism. And if you know that, if you understand it, remember how public radio has always run, which is by the people who appreciate it and get it, you being the backbone of KUOW. So you're standing for local journalism when you go to KUOW.org.
Or you can also donate on the app. You hold the key. So from many vantage points, we'll cover initiatives on climate change, and there's a whole bunch of them, so I'm not going to read them all to you guys, but Initiative 2081, the so-called Parents' Bill of Rights, which is very appropriate with this whole cell phone thing.
Yes, indeed.
Our reporting will be tough and thorough and nuanced and reasoned and calm, and we take your guys' feedback too. We want to know what you want to know so we can go back and ask those questions. Our goal is to deliver everything you need to cast your most well-informed vote this fall and to feel like you have a say in your everyday. 206-543-9595. I did not mean to rhyme right then.
I thought it was perfect. I was like, wow.
All right, let's get back to Week in Review. We promise you that we're going to say something that made us smile at the end of the show, because local news does not always deliver a smile. I'm just going to pass on one more listener comment from Constance, who says, KUOW is the soundscape to my day. I treasure the programs, podcasts, and on-air voices like Bill Radke. KUOW eliminates, I don't know if she said it that way, but I did. KUOW eliminates.
He imagined it.
KUOW illuminates the issues in our community and the wider world. Thank you, says Constance, and thank you, say I. Our goal this hour, $10,000, not from somebody else, but from you. Don't wait. Don't skip it. Don't leave it for somebody else. It's your opportunity. Give your most generous gift right now. KUOW.org, or when you call 206-543-9595. Okay, we've got like 3 minutes left. I always end on something that made you smile. Did anything happen this week that made the corners of your mouth elevate?
Well, this didn't necessarily make me smile, but I really want to recommend Nina Shapiro's article in the Seattle Times on asylum seekers' journeys to Washington State. It's one of the best things I've read recently. Don't turn off KUOW.
No,
just turn the volume down a little bit and go to seattlettimes.com and read it, and then you can go back to the pledge drive after you finish.
The background and the lives of the people we've been talking about for weeks and months now,
Right.
trying to find a place to stay and get asylum and get work permits and all that, and they're shifted from place to place. And that story got out where they're coming from.
It's just full of incredible and harrowing stories of perseverance, endurance, and hardship. But also some hope.
Smile at local journalism. Anybody else?
I guess I'll be superficial then.
Okay.
That's so great.
Way to go, Catherine.
Okay, so I chaperoned some teens on a trip, and they asked if they could go to a place called Cane's. And so I obliged. Do you know what Cane's is?
No.
It's chicken tenders, and it's not here. Apparently, it's in Oregon and other places. So, listeners, anyway, Cane's. I didn't know what the big deal was. So I had it, and oh my goodness. They're chicken tenders and fries, and it's the sauce. It is the sauce. The magic is in the sauce. And when you get your chicken tender meal, it also comes with garlic toast or Texas toast.
Okay.
So Portland.
Portland.
I mean, but that made to see a bus of teens so happy to get this Cane's and to know that there's the secret sauce that was phenomenal. It was,
Come to Seattle, Cane's.
You just did something I thought was impossible. You made me want to go to Portland. So there's a couple of things. The local UFO people making this challenge to the Area 51 people that Washington State deserves to be the number one locale for the Little Green Men issue. I like that because we do. Even I, who am a big sci-fi fan and stuff, I forgot that most of these sightings started with the Pacific Northwest, the Men in Black and all this kind of thing started here. So if you're going to spend a bunch of money on weird UFO memorabilia, why don't they spend it here in Washington State? We need to capitalize a little bit more on that. And then the other thing is any Caitlin Clark video, I've just been enjoying the heck out of because I'm not a
basketball star.
Yeah, I'm not a WNBA fan, haven't been. But she's just fun to watch, and it's fun to see the other players play against her because they're all getting better. And you see this level of attention. I think that you're watching somebody who can help shape the game, like Steve Largent, Jerry Rice did, and as receivers in football, and Muhammad Ali in boxing and other things. I'm not saying she'll necessarily be that for all time, but she's certainly made a game that was a widespread. Not overly popular. It's kind of like the embarrassing, professional sport. I'm not insulting the players. I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
All right, this is his
not,
part.
It's just not that popular.
3 against 2, friends. Come on.
People. Well, I mean,
my
look,
goodness.
people are not paying attention to it, but they are now. So it's this huge opportunity and growth, and every league starts that way, and so I think it's exciting to see.
Okay, like a basketball referee, I've got to note the 5 seconds on the clock. So we got to get out of here. I know you want to talk more about embarrassment, but that is Washington Policy Center Communications Director David Boze with Business Insider investigations correspondent Catherine Long and host, writer, and producer Angela Poe Russell. Thank you, all of you, for being a Week in Review this week.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And KUOW reporter Diana Opong, thank you for coming along and reminding listeners how all of this happens.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Go to KUOW.org, folks, or go to 206-543-9595 and make your contribution. And thank you. Back next week